Okay, so I'm going to show you how I skim over an Artex ceiling. Now there's a few things that you should know first before you start. First of all, you need to check the Artex and see how well it's adhered. If you can scrape underneath the Artex and you can scrape it off in sheets, then you've got to go down a different route. You've got to look at overboarding it or pulling it down. You've got lime wash paint, you've got distemper, sometimes you've got very weakly mixed Artex. If you can scrape the Artex and it comes off in sheets or just glides through so easy, like you're just scraping flipping butter off or something, then you can't skim over it. You're going to have to look at overboarding it or taking the ceiling down or doing something else. So what I'm going to show you now is if you've scraped the ceiling and it's fairly solid and you've checked in a few different places, I'm going to show you how I then skim over a ceiling. Now, there's loads of different ways of doing this. So, you know, before anyone starts screaming, saying, oh, you should do it this way, you should use bonding, you should do this, you should do it. This is the way that I do it. And I do it day in, day out, like this. And there are other ways of doing it. And I know all of them. I've done most of them. This is just my go-to method of how I usually get over an Artex ceiling. So the first thing you do is check the ceiling, make sure it's solid. Second thing you do is SBR the ceiling. So instead of using PVA glue, I use SBR. This stuff, because once that's set, once that goes dry, it's so much more superior than PVA. It completely kills suction. Now I know people say, oh, you want a bit of background suction, it goes off faster, you go, yeah, fine. I don't. I'm not interested in having any suction. If I want the plaster to set quicker, I use this stuff half time. You don't have to use it. You can be alright just without it. You can do this process without half time. It just takes a little bit longer, but you're only talking, you know, depending on how much you use it, it doesn't really make much of a difference. So, we're going to get started in a minute. Kieran's just about to start mixing the plaster now. And then I'll show you the process, the way I do it. Little important side note, Kieran's just knocked up 2 bags. You need to mix up enough to first coat what you're skimming in one go, really, because you want it all to set at the same speed for the first coat. So, rather than knocking up in, I don't even know where it is. We've got a little single bag bucket knocking around somewhere. There we go. Rather than mixing up in that little 1 bagger bucket, we've mixed up in this one, which we can fit like 3 or 4 bags in. And I know that 2 bags will put this living room ceiling on with the first coat. So we've mixed enough to fire that on the first coat. I'll pop you there in a minute so you can where am I going to be? I'm going to be over there to start off with. There you go. You can watch this a second. Nice stuff. Not too thick, not too wet. Ideally I wouldn't be having all these spotlights hanging down. They would all be not fitted. That's why there's this big channel right down the ceiling here, because electricians, they tend to do what's easiest for them. So we've got all the spotlights fitted, we've got a nice big channel. Rather than him taking a few floorboards up, he just did what was easiest for him, but it is what it is. So anyway, I'm not going to let you watch me for 40 minutes putting a ceiling on because it gets a bit boring. Once the first coat's on, I'll see you in a minute. First coat's nearly on. That half of the ceiling's on. We've just got this half to do. Now, if you notice, when we're putting it on, The Artex is completely covered. There's nothing showing through. Doesn't have to be beautifully flat at this point, just has to be on. Now I'm assuming with this video that you've got some plastering knowledge. I'm assuming that you understand the basics. You know about bringing the ceiling in halfway so it meets up the other half, and you're going clockwise if you're right-handed, anti-clockwise if you're left-handed. You know about, you know, covering over the heel with a trowel and all that. I'm just assuming you've got some plastering basic knowledge before you attempt skim over an Artex ceiling anyway. I mean, if you've never done any plastering before, I wouldn't attempt to skim over an Artex ceiling for your first go. I'd maybe practice on a few walls first, and then a little ceiling, maybe a little bathroom ceiling, and work your way up, and then eventually start plastering over Artex. Right, so the whole ceiling's on now. Now this is the whole point of this video. This is where this method of plastering is going to be different from what I usually would do on walls and normal ceilings. Now, if I check this finished now, it's soaking wet and it's sticking as a light, sticking to my fingers. Now, usually you'd let that pick up a little bit until it's sort of firm and then you'd second coat it, but that's not what we're going to do now. We're going to wait till something goes a little bit more firm where you can touch it and leave an imprint but it doesn't stick to your fingers. You want it where it's just firm enough to touch, and then we're going to flatten the ceiling in. We're just going to give it a little smooth over. Now it's not going to be mint because obviously there's only one coat of plaster on it, so you might hit the little high spot of Artex here and there. But the main points are, the main thing you need to be up to now is the ceiling needs to be on. It needs to be completely covered with no Artex showing through whatsoever, and ideally, we live in the real world, it doesn't always happen. Ideally, you want all the stuff setting at the same speed, so you want it all from the same mix, not separate mixes. You can do it with separate mixes, it just knackers this part of the process up a little bit, but you know, more than one way to skin a cat, you can get over it if things go wrong. But anyway, now we're going to wait. It's soaking, absolutely soaking wet, so I'm going to give it probably at least 20 minutes, half an hour to pick up. Your ceiling might not be as wet, so the times might be different. I've told you how I'm checking it. I'm touching it. If it's sticking to my fingers, it's too wet. You want to be touching it, and you can press and make an impression in it with your fingertips, quite light, but it doesn't stick to you. And then we're going to smooth it over, just trowel it over once. We'll catch up to that bit in a minute, anyway. Right, so we ended up leaving it, all in all, about, what time is it now? This has been waiting for about half an hour, and it's going to wait longer yet. That's it now. We can leave imprints in the plaster, but it's not sticking to my fingers. So it's ready to be smoothed over. So all I'm going to do now is just literally go over the whole ceiling and flatten it in. Now, you're going to give it another coat. This isn't what you're going to be troweling up. You're just getting this first coat on. And what you need to have done is you're blocking out the Artex. So anyone that's plastered over an Artex ceiling in the past knows about the Artex bleeding through. It shows through when you're troweling up, and you keep having to brush it and scrape it back to get rid of it. And what we're going to get rid of that situation with this process now. So all you want to be doing is just give your whole ceiling one nice trowel over. Again, doesn't have to look mint, doesn't have to look how your second coat would when you trowel that up. You're just getting all the lines out of it and getting it nice and flat. If you've got a speed skim, you could use that if you want to. One of these. I've only got a little baby one here, a little small one, because the last one managed to get snapped in the back of the van. No names mentioned. but you can quite happily just smooth this out with a trowel, and that's fine. So speed skim, spatula, trowel, whatever you want. Give it all a nice smoothing out. Okay, so I've just been over the whole ceiling now and flattened it in. That's what it looks like now. Now, as you can see, if you look closely, it's not finished mint, it's just flattened out. Now, what the idea of this is, you're blocking out the Artex, you're getting rid of that. So now, this is the most important bit, and this is where it is a bit of a game changer. Let that go right off. Not like set, but I'm not going to touch that ceiling now until it is like firm. I'm not going to second coat it until that is really set firm. So the Artex now, that usually bleeds through, is under that first coat, and that first coat's flat. So I'm going to let it really set, and then I'm going to second coat it. That, if there's one thing you take from this video, it's that your first coat on, get it flat, and let it go off. Let it go, not when it starts to change colour, not when it's like you've lost it, but whereas usually now, that would be at the point where you'd be second coating it right now. You'd want to be second coating it because it's, you know, it's going off. I'm not, I'm just going to leave it. It could be 15 minutes, could be 20 minutes, could be half an hour. You know, depends on the temperature. There's loads of variables that make plaster set different speeds. But what I'm going to do is, I'm going to be touching it now before I second coat it, and I want to feel it really quite firm. Still spongy when you can still press into it, but it's not going to be marking easy when you touch it. So I'll show you that. Once this is gone off a bit, I'll show you what you're looking for, and then you second coat it, trowel up as usual, and you'll find it is like troweling up over plasterboard. Now, yes, this was just a very light stipple on this Artex, so it's probably one of the easiest ones to skim over. If you see the swirls, the bark effect, the big stipples, you know, this works on all of them. This works on all of them. I'll just go in there, denib the high spots off, and I'll use this process. Remember, always check your Artex first. Make sure it's good and solid and bonded to the background, because you're going to be attaching a lot of weight to it. So you want to make sure that is going to stay up. The Artex, the original Artex, is going to stay in place. If it'll take the weight of plaster, then plaster over it and use this system. I don't want to waffle on, but there's loads of different ways of doing this. There's going to be fellas that jump on this and say, oh, do a first coat with bonding thrown in the mix of finish, or bonding the whole ceiling out, or do a 50-50 mix of bonding, or overboard it, or do this, or give it 3 coats, or sound. There's loads of different ways of doing it. This is just how I do it on a day-to-day basis. Okay, that's had another 20 odd minutes now, and you can see now, when I touch it, I can make impressions in it. It's not wet, it's not sticking to my fingers. It's really firm dried up now. So pay no attention to the 20 minutes, because it's going to be different depending on, you know, if the house is warm, if the house is cold, how old your finish is. There's loads of variables, but that's how you want it. You want it really firm. You don't want it to set. You just want it firm, and then you're good to go with your second coat then, and then just trowel it up as normal. I'll take you through the process anyway, but you just trowel up as you normally would if you're going over a plasterboard ceiling or something like that then. There we go. We're second coating now. We've just mixed up one bag, because whenever you second coat, as a rule, it usually takes exactly half of what you've put your first coat on with. So we put 2 bags on, means we'll probably need 1 to second coat it. And then your second coat now should go on quite nice, should go on really easy, because the ceiling's flat already. the backside going in and out of all these spotlights. Right, that's it. That's been second coated now. And as you can see, the pattern isn't bleeding through. So sometimes, well, all the time when you go over Artex and it's wet, you can see the pattern through the plaster because the plaster's so wet on the pattern. Whereas with this way, obviously the first coat is pretty much almost set and that stops the bleed through. You've got it to go round off, you've flattened it in, and then when you've second coated it, it's just like going over a plasterboard ceiling with no suction. So now I've got it on, I'm going to go over, give it a quick flatten, and then hopefully 2 more trowels and a polish and we'll be done. So that's it, that's had the first trowel now. And you can see already it's coming down really nice, no pattern showing through. Second trowel, coming down now, nearly there, nearly gone. 1 more trowel for the polish. On domestic work, I always give everything 2 coats, 3 trowels and a polish, only because it's the best way to do it. So I find it easy to just do that. Little 10 minutes now before I give it the last trowel. These little clips are getting shorter and shorter because I'm running out of battery power. I'm on about 4%, so see you in a minute. My phone is literally on 2%. I probably should have planned this video better. But anyway, the process is all the same. It was the part at the start that I wanted you to see, the flattening in and the letting it pick up. The first trowel, second trowel, third trowel and polish is just the same as normal. The ceiling's done now. Anyway, it's just all started to turn dark, and as you can see, there's no bleed through of any of the Artex pattern whatsoever. Come down lovely. It was just like troweling up over plasterboard. So all in all, it was a nice ceiling to finish off. Rather than struggling trying to get it smooth, it just come down lovely. Right, anyway, that's it. It's dark outside. It's 5 o'clock. That took me 3.5 hours going for the pints.